Even though his true name was Sarru-kinnu, meant true king, he took the name Sargon when he ascended the throne. Why he did this is unknown, and some scholars say it was a biblical translation, not a willful choice. This name has given scholars the idea that Sargon the Great was a Semite who spoke a Semitic language. The problem is that the name Sargon was used often after his reign, confusing historians as to which legend, myth, or actual historical record applied to the original Sargon known as the Great. He was found floating in a river. Legend has it that a gardener found Sargon floating in a river in a tiny little basket. This myth reflects the story of the biblical Moses and has led some scholars to claim that the biblical authors copied from Sargon's birth to give Moses a more human and humble beginning. Little is known of Sargon's parents. His mother was supposed to be a priestess in an unknown town located around the middle of the Euphrates. His father is completely unknown, even with the handicap of not knowing who his relatives were. Sargon rose to the cupbearer of a ruler of Akkad, and because of this position, Sargon was given leadership over an army. Sargon went on to conquer and create his powerful empire, establishing his name as Sargon the Great. Historical record and tablets from Sargon's era. Finding information about Sargon is quite difficult. There are many men who came after him who used the same name, but the royal inscriptions do attest to him, although the majority of Akkad texts come to the 2nd millennium Assyrian and Babylonian texts. Yet those were not only locations that held inscriptions referring to Sargon. When the town of Ebla was unearthed, its importance was not fully realized. But Italian archaeologists decided to dig a little deeper and eventually came upon a much older city underneath Ebla. In the ruins of that older city were 42 tablets from Sargon's era. A little later, 15,000 more were found, and they detail the business dealings and trade between different nations and Sargon. However, these documents do not pinpoint the dates of his rule, nor provide a sequence to the events surrounding his life. These tablets also describe the law code that Sargon had imposed on his people. Men were fined for having sexual relations with unmarried women, or if they were a virgin, they were put on a trial to see if the woman was raped. Religious tablets were also found depicting the religious practices of the time. He expanded his empire. Sargon was able to use his military and personal genius to carve out a large empire. After conquering Sumer, he set his sights on Syria, Susa of the Elamites, southern Anatolia, and even western Iran. For Sargon, keeping control of such a vast empire was not that difficult. He used trusted men to oversee the captive cities and regions, even to the point of using his daughter to make sure the conquered people were controlled through religious and political means. No emperor has an easy time ruling other nations. The nation people have a way of becoming disgruntled with foreign rule and seek ways to end it. Even after reigning for 56 years, Sargon still had rebellions and other opposition to his rule to put down. The fact that Sargon was able to create a dynasty and have a grandson named Sargon II shows that he was a capable ruler whose empire lasted long after his death. His influence also lasted long after his death as well. Origin of the Akkadian language. Sumer's language was quite different from the language that Sargon spoke. Akkadian was a Semite language, which was only one version of a group of Semite languages that existed at that time. The name Semite was taken from the Bible. It refers back to Shem, one of the sons of Noah. Some of the other Semitic languages spoken at that time and centuries afterward are Hebrew, Arabic, Assyrian, and Babylonian. Sargon the Great's legacy. While Sargon was a great leader, his empire did not last very long. He built a beautiful capital and named it Akkad. Unfortunately, the city did not survive past his grandson, Naram-Sin. The mountain living duty descended upon Sargon's capital city and destroyed. But his capital city was not only part of Sargon's legacy. The Assyrian kings were named after him. Sargon also left behind the law and religious code that helped govern his empire. Finally, his Akkad city name evolved into Babylon, which became a center point of Mesopotamia history for approximately 2,000 years. Even though Sargon the Great rose out of obscurity, he was able to grow into a great leader. He did not let his lack of family or status in life hinder him from obtaining the absolute leadership of the Akkadian people. This is probably one reason he was given the title the Great. When others examined his rise to power and his overall accomplishments, Sargon did not let handicaps of obstacles get in the way of his goals. Sargon is credited with establishing the First World Empire, even though it may have been founded on earlier expansion efforts conducted by Lugal-Zaggisi of Umma No matter who started the expansion, it was Sargon who finished it. His influence helped guide future military leaders, including Alexander the Great.
With so many conspiracy theories out there, it's hard to keep track of them all. Welcome to What We Know, where we try to uncover the histories and mysteries of the world by presenting all different theories out there, and the only narrative we push is this. Here's what we know, make up your own mind.
The rise and fall of Sumer and Akkad. The Sumerians were the first known people to settle in Mesopotamia over 7,000 years ago. Located in the southernmost part of Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Sumer was often called the cradle of civilization. By the 4th millennium BC, it had established an advanced system writing spectacular arts and architecture, astronomy and mathematics. The Akkadians would follow the Sumerians, borrowing from their culture, producing a new language of their own, and creating the world's first empire. Who were the Sumerians? The origin of the Sumerians remains a mystery till this day. They call themselves Sagaiga and their country Kengi. Some believe they came from around the Anatolia or modern-day Turkey. Others suggest they might have come from India and were Caucasian in origin. They were established in southern Babylonia, in what is now Iraq, but at least 3500 BC, located in what the ancient Greeks called Mesopotamia, meaning the land between the rivers. Sumer was a collection of city-states or cities that were also independent, some of which endured for 3,000 years. Beginning around 3500 BC, the Sumerians began to build walled cities, including Ur, the capital of the civilization. Each of these cities contained public buildings, markets, workshops, and advanced water system, and were surrounded by village and land for agriculture. Political power originally belonged to the citizens. But as rivalry between the various city-states increased, each adopted the institution of kingship. Where is Akkad? The Sumerians may have been one of the first known civilizations, but it was the Akkadians that formed one of the first known empires, a Semitic group. They moved into southern Mesopotamia during the early part of the 3rd millennium and gained political control of the area. The civilization was founded by Sargon the Great and was a collection of city-states under the control of Sargon city, Akkad. Sargon reigned from approximately 2334 to 2279 BC and conquered all of southern Mesopotamia as well as parts of Syria, Anatolia, and Elam, establishing the region's first Semitic dynasty. Sargon is known almost entirely from the legends that followed his reputation through 2000 years of Mesopotamian history, but not from documents written during his lifetime. This lack of contemporary record is explained by the fact that the capital city of Akkad, which he commissioned, has never been located and excavated. It was destroyed at the end of the dynasty that Sargon founded and was never inhabited again, at least under the name of Akkad. The rise and fall of Mesopotamian Empire. In 2350 BC, Sargon conquered all the Sumerian city-states, uniting them under his rule, creating the first Mesopotamian Empire. He defeated the armies of Sumer in 2 battles and captured Lugal-Sagasi, the Sumerian king who had united, and earned the title of King of Kish. For the next 2 centuries, the Akkadians would rule Sumer, during which time the cities carried out many revolts against them. Around 2100 BC, as Akkad declined, the city of Ur took its place, rising to prominence a century after its fall, and the city-states once again became independent. The Akkadian Empire collapsed sometime after 2200 BC. Historians blame its downfall on tribes of mountain people called Gutians, who conquered many parts of Sumer, or possibly point of administrative incompetence, a poor harvest, provincial revolt, or perhaps even a giant meteor. Climate change has of course been thrown into the mix as well, and evidence of a long drought and changing winds and ocean currents have been provided to support that idea. In a 2019 study, fossil coral records from Oman were given as new evidence that frequent winter shamals or dust storms and a prolonged cold winter session also contributed to the collapse of the ancient empire. Assyria and Babylon would grow to dominate the area afterwards. From 2112 to 2004 BC, a dynasty based at the city of Ur revived Sumerian culture to its greatest height, even though the Sumerian language had begun to fall out of use. By 2000 BC, it was no longer being used and was replaced as a spoken language by Semitic Akkadian. Although Sargon's dynasty only lasted around 150 years, it created a model government and influenced all of the Middle Eastern civilization and left a permanent imprint on Mesopotamian civilization for the millennia that followed.
If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.